Hey guys, welcome. It's Amy Shine here. Thanks for joining me, listening, watching, wherever you are in the world. And today's episode is episode 8. It's Right Recovery for You. And I have a very special guest here today. Her name is Marilyn Bradford. And Marilyn Bradford is a psychotherapist, and she is the creator of Right Recovery for You. She is the author of this book as well, Right Recovery for You. And she has worked in the field of addiction for over 20 years. And Right Recovery for You is a radical and unique approach to ending any addictive or compulsive behaviors. So Marilyn wrote this book. She also teaches these classes on Right Recovery for You. She sees clients in assisting clients in overcoming their addictions, their compulsive behaviors, and she has a different approach to it. So I'm really excited to interview Marilyn today. Welcome, Marilyn.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Amy. I've been looking forward to this.
So Marilyn, right off the bat, what is your radical, unique approach to Right Recovery for You? What does that mean, a radical, unique approach?
Well, it basically turns on its head everything that traditional treatment says about addiction and recovery. And the first part of it is looking at some of the things that I found with using the access consciousness tools applied to addiction and recovery. It's really different. People can move past any addictive or compulsive behavior. So that's one thing that I found. Also, I work with people to never identify themselves as an alcoholic, as an overeater, as a gambler, but rather to say things like, currently, I'm eating more food than I'd like to, but I'm beginning to make different choices now. One of the most radical things about Right Recovery for You is that it's about empowering people to see that they actually do have choice, rather than that they're powerless and they need something outside of themselves to fix them or to hold them or to whatever it is. Now, this seems radical because people will say, oh no, that doesn't work. But what I found is that people don't have the tools and information required to move into that space of choice. So a whole lot of Right Recovery for You is about giving people different tools that really work and information they've never had before about all kinds of things, so that they can go, oh my gosh, I'm so empowered. I can do this. I can choose. And it's not right away. Like if you've been immersed in traditional treatment, 12-step stuff, not tomorrow, you're not going to be able to go, okay, I'm going to go out and drink. But, what I like to do is to take people to a space of choice. And some people choose to, we'll just take alcohol, never drink again because that's where it works for them. And some people find it's not a problem to have a glass of wine or a beer here and there because they have them. That's the other thing that makes Right Recovery for You so unique, is it's really about empowering people to get rid of those limitations and to have more and more of them. It's about being, not fitting in. And I always used to say to people that the difference between psychotherapy as it's traditionally done and access and Right Recovery for You is about the first. Psychotherapy is about making sure you have a better adjustment to this reality. It's like, here are the rules of this reality and you need to fit in, and let's adjust you so you can fit in. Whereas Right Recovery for You is about, hey, let's get beyond this reality. Let's create something completely different, where those rules don't apply to addiction, compulsive behavior, and mental health. So that was the long way around.
I love that. You said so much in there. I mean, well, I'd love to also give our listeners a small bit of background in your own journey, because you did go through a 12-step program, right?
Oh yeah.
AA, and so this isn't about AA working or not working. I also went to AA, and it provided me with, I always say it on the show, look, AA, I ended up in AA at 21 years old. I was living in Ireland, and it was the only place for me at the time where I could go where I actually got some kind of hope. Yes. For I'm okay. And I always said, I would sit in the rooms and meetings and people's drinking stories I didn't identify with, but everybody spoke about that head stuff, the racing mind, never feeling good enough, never feeling like they fitted in, always feeling, like you were the black sheep in your family or the black sheep in school. And, what I found by going to AA meetings was that the mind of, an alcoholic or addict, or we all kind of had similar programs, thinking, thoughts, feelings running. And it gave me a sense of like I wasn't alone, and it worked, and it gave me certain tools, but it got me to a certain point. But what happened then is it wasn't giving me tools to actually create my life and to actually go beyond like the addiction. Like there's only so many times you can tell your story, and after a while it got repetitive, and I wanted more, and I knew more was possible. So what was your experience, Marilyn, what was it for you that had you reaching beyond AA, maybe for something else?
Well, I was very grateful to AA when I joined, because that was what was out there. And I never had a problem with not drinking. I really didn't. And I did work the program. And I was I'm very bad on years, about 15 years, maybe 16. I don't really remember. So I was sober for that amount. I mean, I didn't drink alcohol for that amount of time. And I did the program. But what I noticed, and I noticed with my clients and I noticed in meetings, was that it was all about making us wrong. I mean, someone once asked me, what was it like to be in AA? And I said, okay, so for 2 weeks, every morning and every night, you do an inventory of yourself and you ask yourself, where am I selfish, self-seeking, dishonest, and afraid? See how you feel after 2 weeks of that. And they were like, oh my God, I don't think I want to do that. So I'm sort of very similar to you, Emmy, is that it was great for what it did. I didn't feel like an outsider. I had a place to go, all of that. But it is about making you wrong. And one of the things that I discovered after doing recovery for you for a couple of years was that there's secondary addictions, which are actually like alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, relationships. But the primary addiction is to judgment and the wrongness of self. And if this isn't dealt with, that's why people relapse, because it is too painful to be the one who never fits in. You're wrong, and everybody is actually encouraging that, both outside of AA, AA and in AA. It's like, so people relapse just to have the relief from the pain. But if you actually deal with that judgment and wrongness of self and get people moving beyond that, you have a freedom you just can't even imagine.
I love that, Marilyn. That was one of the things, that massive shift for me when I found the tools of access consciousness. Like when I took my first, we call it access bars. Basically, access bars are like 32 points on your head. And it's a light touch of different points in your head. And it's really like, it's like deleting, clearing out all that like judgment and the wrongness of you and all that programming and conditioning. And I remember I went to my first bars class, and it was with my friend Rachel O'Brien, who I'd met in AA, and I'd seen this big shift in her. And I was getting my bars run in this class, and she, and I had spent 5 years saying, every day getting up saying, I'm an alcoholic. Hi, my name's Amy. I'm an alcoholic. And it's a disease of the mind, and it's incurable. There is no cure for it. So I was constantly walking around with this, like, I'm defected. Like there's a defect in me, and I have a disease, and it's incurable. So I was constantly functioning, like you said, from this wrongness. There's something wrong with me.
Right.
In my mind, there's something wrong with me. I'd also been through mental illness. So I really did believe that there was something really wrong with me, And so one of the tools, of access, like what's right about you that you're not getting, that turned my whole world around. And then I got to this first bars class, and I remember lying on the table getting my bars run, and Rachel's talking about, you're an infinite being. And I'm like, popped off the bed. I'm like, what? It all just clicked. And I was like, Amy, you're not an alcoholic. You're an infinite being.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, every day I've been saying I'm an alcoholic, and I've been functioning as if I'm an alcoholic, as if I have a disease but I'm not. I'm an infinite being. And it shifted so much because there, like you said, yeah, it was like there's so much wrongness in that you have a disease.
Yeah.
And a
that
disease
you're
of
powerless. And you did all these horrible things to all these other people, and they were just your victims, and just all of this stuff.
Yeah. The inventory every night, like how wrong was I today? How many bad things did I do today? How rude was I today?
I know.
How bad was
I know. One of my
so,
favorite stories is Gary Douglas, the founder of Access. He had a son who went through treatment, and they told the family, they told him and his wife, he needed to go to Al-Anon. And he went on one meeting, and he said later in a class, he said, if I had to listen to those people, I'd drink too. That was hysterical.
Yeah, because there is, like, I mean, AA is amazing, and again, we're not here to knock it. And
no,
if you
it's the right thing for some people. It truly is, and I get that. This is just if you want more or different.
If you want more, and I actually had a friend, and we wondered about her. If she had gone to AA, it may have given her tools like for daily living, like practices, because it gave me a lot of practices and like getting out of bed in the morning, and actually, like it actually prepared me a lot for like setting my day up, and even just like getting spiritually kind of well, and just day-to-day daily living stuff. And then it just came a point where it's like, okay, I require more here. Yeah, but I wanted to
it gives structure.
It gave me a structure.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's great. But I wanted to read this little piece from the book that you wrote, Right Recovery from You, and because it's what we're talking about. You said, but addiction is not a disease. You are not sick. Addiction is an entrenched pattern of avoidance or escape from a life that appears to be too overwhelming, confusing, and painful. It is a place people go to not exist, not experience the pain of self-judgment, and to avoid the sense of being inherently wrong. Yeah, inherently wrong. And so if we're using addiction, like we're using drink or drugs or whatever it is, or food or relationships or sex, to get away from that feeling of being inherently wrong, and then we stop that, but we're still going into how inherently wrong we are, do we ever change?
You can't. It's like you're pinned down by 1,000 judgments. And a lot of what I do in my classes is have people look at the judgments, bring them to, or at least offer the possibility of some awareness of those judgments. And basically what I say is, all judgments are arbitrary. They're just somebody else's points of view. And those judgments are there to control you. Then we internalize them as if that's going to control us, but it just leads to basically a slow death of being. Judgment's very destructive.
And it's funny because, and yes, judgment is the ultimate destroyer. And one of the things you say in your book too is like, the antidote to addiction is being you.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're fully being you, it can't exist. It's a chosen thing that exists only when you've had your being so diminished and so denied, you don't even have a sense of who you are.
And so, Marilyn, what are the ways that you have found, that you have facilitated people into having more of them? Because obviously you deal a lot with people who may be very earlier on in addiction, who may be still going through addiction, who may be still drinking or using or whatever. Some people who are just looking, fresh out of detox or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like how do you facilitate those people in going beyond the judgment? And maybe they have lots of memories from their past or trauma or abuse, and they've had their being annihilated, invalidated. And so they have zero self-confidence, zero self-worth, zero sense of themselves, and just this constant judgment of themselves. How do you facilitate someone like that to
what do you have 2 days?
Yeah, I know. So come to my class.
I'll tell you the big difference between Right Recovery for You and traditional therapy and traditional treatment is traditional therapy, traditional treatment is all about giving you the answer and defining you. Right Recovery for You is all about question and asking you to undefine yourself so that we can see what's there. And one of the questions I always ask people is, well, 2 things. Like someone will come in and say, I'm depressed. And I'm like, how do you know? And like, what do you mean? I'm like, how do you know you're depressed? Well, I have these symptoms. Well, what's that about? Well, my dad died. Okay. So what's your dad mean to you? Actually, I hated him. Okay. You know what I mean? You just follow the questions and a lot gets revealed that wouldn't get revealed if you'd gone, okay, I understand you're depressed. Now, let's work on your symptoms. It's just a whole different approach. And I also always ask, what's right about your addiction you're not getting? Because we tend to judge our addictions and ourselves as bad. And most people are like, that kind of takes a while to get there.
That is
it's a game changer.
So what is right about addiction that we're not getting?
Well, then it generally, I do that for a little bit of shock value because it puts them in a different space. But then I say, okay, so what does it contribute to you? Tell me, how do you use it? What are the good points about it? And people will say things like, oh, I don't know what to do about my marriage. It's falling apart. I don't know what to do with my kids. It's the only thing that gives me that sense of peace and space. Or I have a terrible boss and we have money issues and I don't know how to deal with it. So I take a drink or I just go out and hook up with somebody or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing. That's the only coping skill that you have right now, or the best one. So I would never, how could you give up your addiction if you don't have other coping skills in place to deal with your marriage, to deal with your boss and employment, to deal with your money issues? Let's look at those things. And what if you didn't make yourself wrong for choosing a coping skill like that? So I like to lead people into seeing that they're not wrong. They did the best they could, and they didn't have the information or tools to manage the insanity that was their life, or that was in the life around them. Family, huge,
Yeah, wow. So is this kind of like, well, can you like also, I don't know, it's hard to explain to people, but like, you can take this, is it a 3-day right recovery for you class?
I have a class coming up. Now that we're online, it's a little different. It used to be an in-person Friday evening intro and then Saturday and Sunday. And now what I'm doing is it's a 2-hour intro on September 25th. Then the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th, it's all online, are 3 hours. It's 9 a.m. Well, the 3-hour part is 9 a.m. to 12 noon on those days.
I can share the link in a way in the
this will be the second online one, completely online one. When I was in New Zealand, we did online and in person, but this will be the second completely online. The first one was we just had so much fun. I mean, I don't do it serious.
Classes, Marilyn. Who are like, because sometimes people will say, well, I don't have an addiction, so I don't really,
Well, addiction is really anywhere. I mean, we think of alcohol and drugs. It's anywhere you sort of absent yourself to not exist because you can't deal with something. So addiction can be to being perfect, to making money, to health and fitness, trauma, drama. Those people, everything is like trauma, drama. That's actually an addiction. It can be to making things significant. It can be to being a really good person who helps everyone. So what I invite you to do is ask yourself, when I get a little anxious, when I don't have a sense of what to do, where do I go? What behavior do I go to?
And so you're saying these behaviors they're like coping mechanisms to deal with something like you don't want to deal with some awareness that you have, or you don't want to deal with your kids or your husband or something that's going on in your life. So you use this coping mechanism to kind of almost check out.
You check out. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And it can be called a coping mechanism. The thing is, it becomes an addiction when you don't really have a sense that there's anything else you can do but, go drink alcohol or go help your neighbor who doesn't really need your help.
And I know that you also have, I think I heard that you may be doing something in the future around addiction to phones at the moment and the computers and
Oh
social
yeah,
media and all that.
I did a video with a friend of mine called "Screen Got You Hooked," and we'll definitely in this class coming up, we'll be talking about these different things and a lot on the whole addiction to social media, computers, video games. That's a big, big, big one, and it's one that people. It's just a matter of having the information and the sense of self and being that it becomes a choice rather than a have to.
Yeah, I even noticed, Marilyn, when I heard you were doing that, I was like, oh my God, I need to find out about that. Because I noticed like how much, like I'm constantly on my phone, like, social media, like, and it's like this almost like, like pressure that I have to stay up to date and constantly be doing videos. Cause I have my own business and I need to constantly be posting and it becomes like, it does become almost like this addiction. And then you start scrolling and I can even notice, especially during COVID, like the scrolling, like how much I was using the scrolling through the feeds and just like almost like as a checking out, and I think it's a massive it's a massive thing that's evolving in our world, especially with the younger generation. And I wonder how many parents actually require these tools because they don't know how to deal with their kids.
Right.
Because this is a new kind of like addiction, really, in a way,
Yeah. And it's very interesting because one of my main people on my team who lives in New Zealand, she has 2 boys. And on the last Right Recovery for You class, she spent quite a bit talking about the tools that she's used to deal with her kids and screen addiction. So that'll definitely be a topic in this upcoming class. And it's a biggie.
And then the other one, it is. It's massive. Like, I mean, I was just watching Netflix and they have like, it's called Social Dilemma. And like, it's actually like shows you like how social media, like how the AI systems are set up and how they're designed. And it is designed to hook you in. And like, it's actually designed like how they're hooking people in and how they're taking all your data and how they keep you on the screen for longer. Like, it's actually kind of crazy when you watch it. It's a real eye opener because you're like, wow. And it's good to watch that stuff because you have the information and you're just not a victim to what is happening. But the other thing too, Marilyn, what about like addiction, with like living with family members who maybe overuse or overdrink or, gamble or whatever.
Yeah. Or be addicted to anger or be addicted to criticism or be addicted to being the perfect mom or what? Yes, there's a lot in that. And people who grew up in situations like that. The great thing about the class, it's not like a lecture class, like you're taking a class in college. There are definitely areas that we go to, but it's all about people asking questions about what's going on with them. And from that, everybody else in the class gets stuff or just, oh yeah, when Sally spoke, I had this great awareness of my dad and my sister. And so it's really about the contribution of everyone and everyone having a chance, in a controlled setting, everyone having the chance to bring up whatever's going on with them, with no judgment, with anything like that. So, the family's always a big one. In fact, I have an exercise that I do. It's very participatory. It's not like just sit back. It's very participatory. I have a couple of family exercises that I do with people, and and there's some other topics too where we do exercise. Body is a big one we talk a lot about because when you're in the addictive space, you're not connected to your body. And that's very hard to be around if you're not connected to your body. So we look at that and we look at all kinds of relationships and belief systems and church and school, all kinds of things. So it goes where the class wants to go. It's a very organic kind of thing.
Yeah, addiction runs through every area, really. And so, Marilyn, if there's people on here today and they're listening to this for the first time, or they're just hearing about Right Recovery for You, like, they're even just looking at, in their own life, like is there any like kind of beginner tool? Not that any tool is a beginning tool, but is there any tools or questions that are kind of like a good go-to for someone who's looking to change some of their addictive patterns or behaviors?
Well, there are a lot of great access tools. One of them is, who does this belong to? Remembering that 98% of your thoughts, feelings, and emotions really aren't yours. You're like a psychic sponge. And I'm not talking about reading tea leaves. I mean, you walk into a room, someone's angry, you pick it up. So I give a little story that I was, it was when I was doing Right Recovery in the beginning, and I had found that I could have a glass of wine. It wasn't a big deal. But I was driving home from my office at 5:00 on a Friday afternoon. And I kept getting this, oh man, I want a scotch. I can't wait till I get home. I'm going to pour this great big scotch, which is what I drank before I got into AA. I was just going through this whole thing. And then I stopped and I went, wait a minute, I don't drink scotch. It was just, I was tapping into the Friday happy hour club and group of people with some kind of neuro pathway or something that I had. But a lot of times, a lot of what keeps people drinking or drugging, and you've talked about, it was nice to have people to connect with in AA. Well, if a lot of people, they have all their friends are drinking, and you'll pick up all their desires. It's until you start working with, who does this belong to? You're going to be picking up a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions from other people that aren't even yours. And the other thing is, and you brought it up earlier, Amy, what's right about me, I'm not getting. What's right about what I've created, I'm not getting. Start going towards the positive. And then ask yourself, being as honest as you can, what am I ready for now? What would I like now? What would I like to create as my life, universe, consciousness, whatever? Show me the person or whatever's going on. You can ask for help from the universe. You really can. And from consciousness. And if you're congruent with your ask, not like, oh yeah, I want to lose a lot of weight. But you can, but if you're really congruent, like, I am committed to be with my body and to have the two of us, because you're a being, there's your body, have the two of us really work together to let go of some of this excess weight. Consciousness, help me out here. What can I do? And you find these amazing stories of people are walking down Central Park and there's two ladies behind a bush talking about a diet. She's like, that, the body's like that, what that, and then she lost like 80 pounds in 6 months or something. So just ask for that. Get very clear on what you're looking for and what you'd like to create, and ask for assistance with that. And then it's one step. It's not like you're going to see the final thing, but it's like, oh, this step. It's that whole thing like Indiana Jones stepping out on faith, basically, on, okay, there's going to be a stair there, or whatever it was, a brick. It wasn't a brick, but it was a step on. He's going across this chasm, and he's take one step. That's what you do. You take one step. What else? Find gratitude in your life. Gratitude changes so much. And number one, be grateful for you. That's what I would say.
Wow, that's a big one, especially for those of us who've, been through AA or any of that, because we do that thing of, I'm grateful for this person, I'm grateful for that, I'm grateful for my house, and I'm grateful for my food, and I'm grateful for this. And then we never really put us on the list. And I find in my journey through AA and recovery, like that, as addicts and addicts, those that have been through addiction tend to be so hard on themselves and lack that kindness and caring.
Kindness. Yes, Amy, lack of kindness. Yeah, and make sure that you are in the computation of your life daily. It's not just, I need to go help this person, I need to go to work. It's like, okay, where am I in this? And what's going to work for me? It sounds like what I'm talking about is a lot of self-centeredness, but the truth is, when you really include yourself, you don't have a need to be self-centered because you're there.
I like that. Yeah. There's just one question here in the thread. Yvonne asked, is there like a direct connection from it with addictions to like distractor implants? So distractor implants, for those who don't know, in Access are like anger, fear, shame, guilt, regret. So she's wondering, is there a direct connection?
Well, I think there's a connection, because in addiction, you're leaving yourself So you're making yourself very vulnerable to all of the rules and regulations of this reality, and that's what distractor implants are. So you'll find people who are heavily into addictions. They get angry, they get guilty, they do everything the way it's supposed to be done, which has nothing to do with being you and being present. So I think it's a great question.
Would you also say too, like, say like the anger comes up or the regret or the guilt for something, and then that leads to addiction, or that leads to wanting to drink or wanting to check out or wanting?
That's also, that goes into that whole thing of lacking information, of not knowing these are distractor implants, not knowing that you can destroy and uncreate them.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
And you get that information if you take any of the Access Consciousness classes, mainly the foundation. If you come to a Right Recovery for You, you'll get that information. You can also check out Marilyn Bradford's book, Right Recovery for You. You can buy that on Amazon and Google it, Right Recovery for You, Marilyn Bradford. And she also has a website. It's www.MarilynBradford.com, right?
Yes.
Or is it .html? It's .com? I think it's .com.
Think so.
But I have in the description, if you're viewing this online, in the description or in the podcast section, I have her link to her Right Recovery for You page on her website, which is www.MarilynBradford.com/Right Recovery for You. But the book is a great beginning, Marilyn. I've read this book a couple of times. It's full of information and tools and questions. And she gives loads of exercises in this book as well that are amazing to start getting you to have more of you and out of that wrongness.
Yeah, and that's my target, is to really empower people to have more of them. That's why I do so many tools and exercises and information. That's what it's all about. It's like, let's get out of this stuff. Let's free you.
Yeah, I'm so grateful, Marilyn. Like, thank you for being a different voice in the world with Right Recovery for You, and for showing the world that there is a different possibility for those of you who do want to choose it. You don't have to live in the wrongness. You don't have to live thinking you have an incurable disease. You don't have to live thinking you're powerless and that, something in a bottle has more power than you, and you don't have to live thinking you're self-centered and constantly judging yourself, that there is a different possibility. So thank you for being so courageous and bringing this body of work like Right Recovery for You to the world. I took this class over 7 years ago in Ireland, and it changed so much for me. And I also would love people to know that this is in the world as well. So thank you for coming on with me.
Thank you so much, Amy. I really appreciate your enthusiasm for Right Recovery and all the work you do with showing people there's a different possibility.
There really is. So thanks for joining us, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, Marilyn Bradford, she's on Facebook. You can always just send her a message on Messenger. She has her website, www.MarilynBradford.com. Check out Right Recovery for You, her book. It's on Amazon. Google it. You'll find it, no problem. And thanks for watching. Bye.